how do you apply the spiritual life to this turmoil? Because that's going to be our solution.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of our friend, longtime friend of the show, Mr. Chris S., that you heard at the beginning of this episode number 398, I may add. And you are going to hear so much more from Chris in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is made possible by Mary Lynn, Laura, Tim, and Brad. And so you say to yourself, what exactly did Mary Lynn, Laura, Tim, and Brad do? Well, they went by our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Mary Lynn, Laura, Tim, and Brad. This here episode is coming right out to Ewan's. All right, we're going to get right into Mr. Chris S. today. We have had Chris on the podcast many times in the past, and but every time that we've had him in the past, it's been kind of like him sitting down with me and me interviewing him and interrupting him and all that kind of good stuff. But this is just Chris at a live event, and he is at the Bronx Big Book meeting where this was recorded, and this is Chris just kind of telling his story without me interrupting him. And so I wanted to put on a live version of Mr. Chris S. Chris S. is from Blairstown, New Jersey, and we'll go ahead and get started with this. And remember now, we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of the episode. Enjoy, Chris.
Really good to be here tonight. I want to thank this group. There were a number of groups that were life-saving in, the beginning of the pandemic. This was one of them. That you could always count on this group being vital at 9:00 at night. There were some other groups that Firing Line, the Beacon Group in Boston. There was a number of them, but this one you could always count on there being a really good speaker, a really good discussion. And, when all the meetings shut down everywhere, we knew we needed to be connected, right? We all, intuitively, we knew we needed to connect with one another. And so, excuse me, so the people who set up this meeting and made us all family, I certainly want to thank them. And we're all family, but I've got some friends on here tonight too, so I'm very pleased. So my job tonight is to read. We're on page 100, one paragraph down. To put it into context, this is the chapter "Working with Others." The best way I can describe this context is when this book was written. The sober drunks had been together maybe. They'd formed and they were starting to get more and more members by 1939. And where you and I would come into Alcoholics Anonymous, join the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and when we start to go to meetings, That's not what they did. The amount of time that we spend on meetings is the amount of time they spent going all over town looking for alcoholics who might be interested in a solution to their alcoholism and their drinking. So I mean, think about that. Think about that. Like every single night. Well, I think I'll go down to traffic court tonight. I think I'll go down to a couple of bars and see who gets thrown out. I mean, spending that amount of time trying to find alcoholics. So that's the context of this chapter. And this chapter is explaining to us how we're supposed to do that. And my first exposure to this chapter was, wow, that's pretty hardcore. Those guys were hardcore, back in World War I, you know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is the instructions and the guidance and the attitude that you're supposed to have when first approaching a potential member of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's still valid. It's still vital. There's on your first meeting, you're supposed to do all these things. You're supposed to explain the steps. You're supposed to do all these things. On the second meeting, you're to give the person an opportunity to go through the steps with you. And there's a certain way we need to approach this so that we don't scare anybody off or blow the opportunity. So that's the context of this chapter. We've now found a prospect, and we're working with them. We're now working with people. We dragged a couple off of a bar stool. We found a couple at the insane asylum. In today's day and age, maybe we've got treatment center commitments or detox commitments. Now we've got some people who are new that we're working with, and they're showing signs of progress. So that's the context. That's where we land tonight on page 100. And I'm going to start doing what you all pay me for, and I'm going to start reading. So it says here, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. So again, I think alcoholism is one of the most misunderstood illnesses on the planet. The people who we pay to treat us for it misunderstands it. You know what I mean? Like the judge misunderstands, our family misunderstands, everybody misunderstands. It's an illness that only a spiritual experience can conquer. Now think about it. Okay, I've got an illness. I'm going to go to the doctor. Doctor's going to, put his stethoscope on me. Maybe take some blood work. Then he's going to come back with what I need to do. You need to take these pills. You need to do this therapy. You need to go to PT. Whatever it is, right? And we're used to that as an approach to illness. We're not used to somebody saying we've got to go into a church basement and get a plumber named Larry as a sponsor. You know what I mean? That's unorthodox. That's not something that we really can get with. But the fact of the matter is for the treatment for alcoholism is spiritual living, consistent spiritual living. That's a treatment for alcoholism. Our treatment for alcoholism isn't abstinence per se. I quit drinking 1,000 times, and that never worked because I only stayed quit a certain amount of time. I need to be released from alcohol, and for the release to happen, for the recovery to happen, I've got to do a whole bunch of work. My feet have to be in action. This isn't a theory. It's not a philosophy. It's not a book that you read and now intellectually I understand how to not drink anymore. That's not what this is. This is an action program. And now we're working with another alcoholic and we're showing another alcoholic how to live spiritually. And we start very, very basic. Don't hit anybody. We start where the person is, Don't lie. Don't take money out of the basket. I mean, very, very simple stuff. We approach them where they are, and we get them started on participating in the maintenance of their spiritual condition. It says, when we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Promises abound in this book. So Bill Wilson knew us. If he was going to tell us to do something, we needed to know what was going to be in it for us. So he peppered this book through with promises. And this is one. My life is going to be better than I could have ever imagined or ever hoped for if I live a spiritual program, if I live a spiritual life. And that's been true for me. My life's been ridiculous. It's not been anything like I would have planned. It's quite unexpected, many of the things. But I got to tell you, the things that are in my life today are things I wouldn't have put on my top 10 list, when I was one day sober, but are so important to me today. You know what I mean? Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. That's an unbelievable promise. You will live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what's going on out there, no matter who's dying, no matter if you're going bankrupt, no matter if you're getting in car accidents, because it's not external anymore. It's not external anymore. Well, it's internal now, because we're living in the world of the Spirit. And it's a new and it's a wonderful world. And yeah, life is going to hit us in the face. And it's not always going to be pretty. And we're not always going to be happy about it. But we're going to live in a new and wonderful world. We're not going to be living in the madness of alcoholism anymore. The shivering denizens of alcohol's mad realm. We're going to live in a new and wonderful world. And that's been true for me, especially because I've worked with so many other alcoholics. In 2 weeks, please don't anybody clap, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to be celebrating 35 years. Okay. In that 35 of those years, I've sponsored people and I've worked with people. And that is the main contributor to this new and wonderful world that I live in. So he's telling us, he's giving us marching orders. He's telling us what we've got to do. We've got to work with we've got to work with other alcoholics. We've got to help other alcoholics. This isn't a self-help program. It's a help others program. And through the helping of others, we live in a new and wonderful world. It's the best deal we'll ever get as drunken, crazy alcoholics that have just let everybody down and burned every bridge and flipped over every table at Christmas. It is the best deal we're ever going to get. It says here, when working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. So another thing that was very, very, you got to understand, in the 30s, there were roles, there were, familial roles that are a little bit different today. We're a lot more fluid in, how we handle relationships and how we handle different things in our family. But back then there was the husband, there was the wife, and there was the children, and the roles were very, very well defined. And when an alcoholic came into Alcoholics Anonymous, especially in the Akron area, if somebody wandered in and got sponsored up and started working and started going to meetings, they would be heavily encouraged to bring their family. They understood on day one, alcoholism impacted the entire family. yeah, let's say the husband was the alcoholic, but the damage was all throughout the family. And so as someone who's trying to help the alcoholic, we also, try to inform and encourage the other family members, especially let them know what's going on, what we're doing with their husband, taking him to church basements. You know what I mean? We need to let them know what's going on and what the end game is. The end game is going to be recovery. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do. So one thing I'm not is a marriage counselor. Okay. What I can do is I can share my experience, good and bad, with marriage. One thing I am is I'm not a tax accountant. One thing I can share is my good and my bad experiences with the IRS. I try to share my experiences. So if someone wants to drag you into a quarrel or something like that, how I handle it today is what pops into my mind is what spiritual principles are applicable right now for this person. Is it inventory? Is it amends? Is it prayer? How do you apply the spiritual life to this turmoil? Because that's going to be our solution. When I was first working with my sponsor, I had the greatest sponsor in the world when I was brand new, right? And what I recognized in him was he was a father, he was a provider, he had a house, he had a car, he had his children. He was raising his children as a single dad, and he was doing an unbelievably good job with all of this. And he was calm, and he was pointed in his comments, and he had really, really constructive feedback to me. And it all boiled down to spiritual principles. So when I flew over to his house one time and I said, ex-girlfriend, she's getting the bikers on me. The bikers are going to be coming over my house. They're going to kill me. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He's like, well, I'd like you to go to a meeting tonight. What? What does that have to do with it? I don't need a meeting. I need guns. He was not interested in helping me manage an unmanageable life. He was pointing me toward the solution to all of it, which was stick with this AA stuff, man. Don't get distracted by the craziness out there, and the bikers never came. He knew that. He was intuitive that why would they come bother me? You know what I mean? I'm like this loser living with mom. They're not even going to get involved. So anyway, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn them against arousing resentment or jealousy. So what our alcoholism really is this. It's a toxic case of self-consciousness. That's what alcoholism is. And we use alcohol as a treatment for that self-consciousness, because we can't, being sober in that kind of self-consciousness is just no fun. We're resentful. We've got anxiety. We're filled with remorse and shame and regret. And, I could name 100 things that we've all suffered from 12 million times. And all of that comes from a self-consciousness. And Bill understood this, and he knew that self was a condition that we needed to recover from. Read the book really critically sometime, paying attention to every time he mentioned selfishness or self-consciousness or self-seeking. We must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. And he says there's no way of entirely getting rid of this self without God's help. He's very, very clear on what the solution to alcoholism is. Yes, we need to not drink. Don't get me wrong. Putting the plug in the jug is not a bad start. But alcoholism is going to tear you up in between the drinks. You got to understand what you're up against. So that's why we need to live a spiritual life. It's the spiritual life that brings us toward comfort, brings us back to sanity, puts us where our emotional state is in a good place. Spiritually, we get to a place where we're in a good place and everything's good and all is well. And that's really what recovery is. All is well. Even with all the crazy stuff that's going on, all is well. So you should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember when they are impatient the blessed fact of his sobriety. So we need to explain to people that they haven't gotten sick overnight. It's been 20, 30 years of drinking. And sure, they're going to go to meetings. Sure, they're going to do the steps, but they're not going to be rendered perfect overnight. There's going to be slow, incremental, inch at a time progress sometimes. And the family can be encouraging or the family can be discouraging when dealing with an alcoholic. I was at a meeting and I was talking tonight. There was a guy who was running with us in the early days, and his wife grabbed him one day and just said, "I liked you better when you were drinking. You're never home. You're asking me all these questions about money. You never asked about money before. I handled everything. You're asking about the kids. I did all that. Now you're asking me all these questions. And you're never home." And a girl named Bunny called to see if you wanted to go to the gratitude meeting with her. You know what I mean? Yeah, I want to kill you. And it's the kind of stuff that you just sometimes it's better for us to have that conversation with the family than the guy who stopped drinking or the girl who stopped drinking 5 days ago. So that's kind of our job. If you've been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. So again, he's telling us to share our experience. There's many places in this book that says our dark past can be of infinite value to other people who are going through or who have gone through similar circumstances. And I was here, I was him or worse than him, and I'm here now. Recovery is progressive, and there's some good news. We've got some good news for you. It's not going to happen today, but we've got some good news. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things that alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we cannot go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles. If we go into their houses, we mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows this is not necessarily so. All right, so when I first showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous, it was the land of one-liners, right? People, places, and things. I mean, it was just, I just don't take a drink even if my ass falls off. It was a land of one-liners, and they all came from irresponsible treatment centers, right? And it's not. It's true that you should avoid drinking parties and places where there's alcohol before you go through the steps, because you're still powerless until somewhere around step 10. You know what I mean? You're still powerless over alcohol. You could relapse. But it's not our experience. We get to a place where we are released from this merciless obsession to put alcohol in our body. We're released from it. And I don't go to bars where everybody's getting drunk and playing pool or something. That's the boringest thing I could imagine. But I go places where there's drinking, and rarely will I ever see somebody that drank like me. You know what I mean? It's like people who have have a Manhattan. Oh, I've already had one. I like that stuff. Doesn't faze me. I've been released. I react as if I'm recoiling from a hot flame. Like if somebody hands me a bourbon and Coke, I will react like it's gonna burn my hand automatically. I'm just no thanks. Nope, not for me. I'm allergic. You know, it, it doesn't really help things. And if somebody's really pushy, I'll say, well, the last time I drank, I threatened my entire family with a handgun. I was going to kill all of them, and I loved them. I don't even like you. You sure you don't want me to have that drink? You know what I mean? So I'm going to do one more paragraph, and then I'm gonna stop talking. We meet these conditions every day. What conditions do we meet every day? Exposure to alcohol. I got some in the refrigerator left over from a party this summer. It's those crazy hard things, like hard raspberry juice or something, just the stupidest stuff. And I'm trying to give it away to people who are coming over here. But I'm exposed to it. I'm not afraid I'm going to run out there and drink the hard raspberry juice. You know what I mean? I'm recovered. I've been released. And if I stay in fit spiritual condition, I'm going to be fine. So an alcoholic who cannot be around that stuff still has an alcoholic mind. There's something the matter with their spiritual status. And I will add, they haven't done the steps. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Green Ice Cap, and even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcohol problem. It's unfortunate. A lot of people send people to treatment to do that. I'm going to send him to 90 days. At least he won't be drinking for 90 days. That's not the solution. The solution is internal. The solution is spiritual in nature. And it's called an awakening. It's called an awakening because, damn it, we wake up. That's what we do. We wake up spiritually, and now we see things as they really are. We're not surrounded by delusion anymore. We wake up. And I'll tell you what, the Bronx Big Book Group is a great place to wake up. I've been on this meeting many, many times, and God bless all of you. Thank you for asking me to be here tonight.
Oh, so good to hear Chris live there, as opposed to, like I said on the beginning of this episode, with me interrupting him during episodes, during interviews. And it was so good to hear Chris. So if you have any feedback for Chris or any of the other speakers and you want to contact me, I'm at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. And remember now, we do not want you sharing your toothbrush, but we would love for you to share this episode with a friend or family member. That may be just what they need today. Now, on to a little bit of a listener feedback. The first bit of feedback we get here is from, I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, Graham, or it could be Gramey, Graeme. Graham writes in, and the subject line is God Nuggets in the post office box, in the P.O. box. And so why he is writing in, he's not actually writing to me, he's writing to Mike, who monitors our P.O. box. And just in case there are those out there, it's been a while since I've said it, but if you want to write into our P.O. box, either you don't have the ability to be able to email, or maybe you just like to write physical letters, which is absolutely fantastic. And Mike actually monitors our P.O. box, and that address is Sober Speak, 1962 East Apache Boulevard, P.O. Box 7925, Tempe, Arizona 85281. And anyway, this is written, like I said, it's to Mike, but Mike shared it with me, and I wanted to go ahead and put it on the air. It says, "Hello, Mike. I listened to the Sober Speak podcast, and I listened to your episode. And what they're talking about is we recorded an episode with Mike, and it was called God Nuggets in the P.O. box. So this person decided to go ahead and write in a God Nugget, I guess is what you would call it, to deliver it to Mike at the P.O. box. Anyway, he says to Mike, "It was very inspiring to hear how you have moved into this service work with the program. I've been in and out of the program for several years. However, last October, I really came back into my recovery with a vengeance. There is nothing more important to me now than my sobriety and all the methods that I've tried over the years. AA is the one that works for me. I'm at a stage in my life where I've done many things, had successes and failures, but the number one priority for me is sobriety through the work of the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I attend meetings daily, and I have just signed up to go on a trip to Vancouver for the international conference in July. Good for you." He says, I'm assuming that's, by the way, let me look here. It could be either. I don't know. Graeme. Anyway, this person says, your work is important. The need you saw for people to be able to write into the program and share their story or support and also get help was great. No matter what or where we are in life, once we discover the recovery from the 12 steps and AA, then we are in the same family. Well said. The work that you are doing, Mike, is like a seedling of growth in the recovery garden John M. started with this podcast. I noticed your voice right off the bat, Mike. Your wife is so correct in her guidance. A future in voiceover work is definitely something that will work for you. I worked professionally in radio and television broadcasting for 20 years. I really loved it. I really loved doing it, and I did so at several different stations, with the final 10 years of my career focusing on audio production. So studio work and voiceover work is something that I did for quite a while. I then went back to school and trained for computer work, and I spent the last 20 years working in IT for the oil and gas industry, and lo and behold, now I find myself at 60 years old at a crossroads. What do I do next? Yeah, it's like we're always trying to figure out what we're going to do when we grow up, right? They go on, well, the first step was taking my sobriety serious. I lived my life so much chasing what I thought was important. Much of what was impressed to me by my father: career, success, financial security. Those are the two I had chased the most. But we all, hopefully, grow up, and eventually, even though I did, I must say I was a late bloomer. Now I see that there is more to this life. The 12 steps of my higher power have given me strength to let go of the things that no longer serve me. What can I give to others? How can I live faithfully true to a path that does good to myself, others, and God? That is what drives me 24 hours a day now. I don't feel the same stress I used to have, anxiety and control issues, but I do my best. That's all I can do. My projects going forward, I think, may include coming full circle and coming back to some voiceover work myself. And just so, in case you didn't listen to the episode with Mike, the one God nuggets in the P.O. box. He talked about he was going into some voiceover work now. And so anyway, that's what this person is referencing. And they say, I'm thinking about a little studio as I have some ideas about content creation that I would like to develop. Keep up the great work you are doing, Mike, and pass along my greetings to the rest of your team working on helping those who listen to Sober Speak and write in via your snail mail P.O. box. Yours in sobriety, Graeme M, Graemem, and that is in Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada. So anyway, thank you so much for writing in and giving Mike a little pat on the back there, and because I think he does a great job as well, and I'm so thankful that he monitors that P.O. box. Sally is. Gosh, man, I'm doing so better. Celia Celenia writes in, and she says, "Thank you, and Hillary R.W. Hello, my name is Selenia. Firstly, I want to thank you, John, so much for your podcast. I discovered it about 6 months ago. I am from New Jersey, just like Chris, and it's my meeting in between meetings and has helped me to stay sober. I am 5 years sober, and I'm doing a little trauma work and getting outside help, just like Hillary. I also sing. I identified with her a lot, especially with having a victim mentality and feeling inferior to those around me and unlovable. To hear another alcoholic go through so much and to be able to find serenity and get through the things she has in addiction and in sobriety is inspirational. Thank you for having Hillary on to share her story. And if you could get us connected, I would really love that. This is my email. I'm part of the super secret Facebook group. And here is my telephone number. Thanks you for all you do, Selenia. And as you know, Selenia, I went ahead and copied you on an email with Hillary, and I'll get out of the middle there and let you two communicate. And but I'm sure she's going to absolutely love hearing from you. Thank you so much, Selenia. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Anyway, all right. Barb writes in, and the name or the subject line is God's grace surrounds me. And Barb says, "Hi, John. I'm writing to you again to update you that I've recently had the privilege of accepting 4 years of being clean and sober." Well, congratulations, Barb. She says, "Accepting into my heart that I deserve this lifestyle. I've always struggled with self-esteem, John, always feeling like I had to do more just to be enough. This became evident once again a couple of months ago when my mom passed away. I began to have these thoughts did I really need AA? Was I really an alcoholic? Were these people helpful or toxic? Do I believe in a higher power that I call God? The big book says that my disease centers in my mind and that alcoholism is cunning, baffling, and powerful. So I struggled with these obsessive thoughts. I wasn't sure if I was grieving or I was just looking for a way out of my feelings, or was there a different path for me? Once again, I became honest with myself, my tribe in AA, my sponsor, and here's what I found. It started with some really scary symptoms pointing to colon issues, but I wanted to ignore them because my mom was dying and I needed to be there for her. My doctor scheduled a colonoscopy, and I continued to cancel it or push it back until the symptoms got worse. When I looked up colon cancer, I had every symptom there was. I couldn't wrap my head around a young woman with no family history getting colon cancer. My sponsor gave me some really good advice, which was, quote, stay present, don't trouble until trouble troubles you, and 2, do the next indicated thing. Call them and tell them what's going on and see if you can move the procedure up. I tried not to worry, and my procedure got moved up on 4 different occasions. The day of it, I was scared, yet felt peaceful. They removed a tumor that turned out to be precancerous. My other sponsor, Matthew, who you've had on the show multiple times, yes, Matthew, I know Matthew, suggests that every night I send him my 10th step, which includes, where do I see God's grace in my life? This is what I wrote him the day after surgery. I can see how getting clean and sober for the last 4 years has allowed me to choose me and has allowed God has allowed me to choose God. And I have also grown spiritually, and I've been able to grow in emotional maturity and to do the next right thing. If it had not been for my scary symptoms I've had recently, I would not have talked to my local sponsor who encouraged me to get the colonoscopy. The doctors would have not have found the pre-cancer tumor that was growing and then removed it. I would have continued to bury my head in the sand, and prior to recovery, I would have continued to drink myself to death. Change can be scary. God's grace showed me the answer to the questions I've been asking myself. Is AA worth it? Is all this hard work on myself worth it? Am I worth it? The answers are a resounding yes. I'm worth love because I'm worth God's love. And because now I love God, I love myself enough to see the power in change, the power in me, and the power in God's grace. What do you do today that can influence your sobriety? Do not be discouraged. You never know when God's grace will surround you. Barb W. And once again, the subject line for that was God's grace surrounds me. Well, thank you, Barb. Sounds like you've been through the ringer here recently, and I'm glad that you're getting in contact with your higher power and those around you. And I'm glad you're continuing to grow, and so good to hear from you. All right, everybody. That right there is another episode of this podcast. What is this called? Sober Speak in the Books. And keep coming back. It works if you work it. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back here next week. And if so, may God bless you and keep you until then. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.